Never before have we been faced with so many choices about how we should think, act, and live. How should we spend our time, our resources, and our money?
Blessed are the pure in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
How do we view ourselves and those around us?
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
How can we find true success and lasting happiness?
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land.
How can we know what is right and true?
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
How can we make sense of suffering and loss?
Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
And those of us who want to continue with Jesus need to choose Him and choose each other in a deeper way.
Welcome to the choices we face.
Welcome to the choices we face. Peter Herbeck and myself are here again with some wonderful guests, Fred and Leslie Fisher from the Fort Myers area of Florida. Some of you probably remember Leslie, who was a guest on our program a few years ago, and she was here and she told about her wonderful work with women, helping women who are dying, helping women who are going through suffering and pain to really find the love of the Father and healing. And we decided that behind every great woman is a great man. And so we wanted to hear from Fred this time. We wanted to hear about how you two met each other and just how you grew into becoming a Catholic couple and what it's been like to try to serve the Lord as a Catholic man and woman who's married. So how did you meet each other, Fred?
That's a story in itself there, Ralph. I went to college in California, St. Thomas Aquinas College in California, and Leslie had her father die at the age of 45, and one of her best friends was going to school at that college and said that she ought to get away from the house because her father died in the house, and he felt that she ought to get away. And so he was going to school at Thomas Aquinas and brought her along, and there was a job opening as a chef. So she got to me through the belly, and then, you hear about that often, right? So I had no chance. I had no chance. She was in the kitchen, and I got all kinds of goodies from the kitchen.
She favored you?
She favored me.
She slipped you extra food?
Well, sometimes. But at any rate, that's how we first met, in the kitchen.
Okay.
And we became very, very good friends first. Mm-hmm. And
that's a good way to begin, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know how deep you want to get into this. So.
Okay. And then how'd you get married?
Well, we were very, very close in college days, and she decided that was a little too close for the time frame that we were in, because I was only a sophomore, I believe. Right. And so she decided that she was going to go do missionary work in Minot, North Dakota, of all places. And I was very upset about this.
You must have been a pretty committed Catholic then.
I was, and I really had thought that maybe I could become a nun, or I had that desire, and I needed to seek that. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and I was there for about 1.5 years, and ran into this young man who had come there to do seminary work and maybe become a priest. And we got to be very good friends. And 6 months down the road, he had asked me if I would marry him. Mm-hmm. And I said yes.
What about Fred, though, back in California?
Well, I just didn't think, we were friends. There wasn't really any,
She ditched me.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. But I came home to get married, and my mother made 7 bridesmaids' dresses by hand.
Oh, my.
And everything was heading forward for the wedding. And 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from Fred, and he said he was concerned about my welfare and happiness.
Well, Fred, what happened? You heard that Leslie was getting married to another guy, and you found out that she was the girl for you by that?
Well, I always knew she was the girl. There was just nothing I could do about it at the time. I had to finish school. But the thing that concerned me a little bit was that she had gone to this place, and she had known me for 2 years, and here she met this guy only for 6 months, and now they're going to get married. And I said, what the heck's all that about? So I did. I was concerned about her well-being and happiness, and on the side, I really wanted to marry her. So anyway, I remember going up there, and her mother said, "Oh yes, come on up." She loved me. So that was.
Come on up and break up our wedding.
That's right.
I just finished the 7 bridesmaids.
But I remember, I was at the dining room table signing, invitations to her wedding, getting them going.
He
and all.
addressed them and stamped the invitations.
Wow. Did they go out, the invitations?
Yes, they did.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
There were showers, there was everything. So,
And you were helping.
I was helping. But at any rate, I guess that night I told her just really how I felt about her, and that, that I was the one. And how could she possibly resist that?
all right.
So anyway.
So I went to bed, I remember that night, and I really was crying. I just didn't know what God's will was. So we called off the wedding, Tom and I, and I went back to do another 1.5 years of missionary work. And it was then that I was getting letters, or maybe 2 letters a day from Fred. And I ended up finishing
Fred
up in
can
a
write?
1.5 years.
Scribble.
Scribble. And we ended up getting engaged. So,
And
And
now
what
married,
happened
now married 25 years.
Wonderful.
yes.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit what it's been like. And now you told me previously that Tom actually became a priest.
Yes, he did. He
So
went
that-
into the
well,
priesthood.
That's great how that
Right.
all worked out. Yeah.
It's awesome how God's will, if he wants something, he lets it be known.
Yeah, God's will is good for everybody concerned.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't just do something good for one person in a situation,
Exactly.
but his will is always good for everybody concerned. Yeah. Well, what have you learned in 25 years of marriage? What are some of the things that you've had to face? What are some of the lessons you've learned? What's it been like?
It's been awesome. I love him more today than I did yesterday. And I think because of our faith that we've just grown more in love with each other, and we found that our relationship in Jesus Christ, that it has intensified and grown as well.
So you really found the fact that it's a Christian marriage has really made a difference, having Christ as part of your life and marriage.
I
Definitely.
think that's the essential part to the marriage. I think anything else flows from that. And we've encountered a lot of difficulties through the years, as all married couples do. And but because we have Christ as our base, we're able to endure all things, and we're able to work through them. And they've always worked out for the best, which is.
Well, Fred, what were some of the obstacles that you've pressed through, and what has the Lord taught you through that pressing, getting through?
Well, we've gone through a few things. I guess maybe I should say one of the big things, our youngest son went through an illness when he was very, very young, about 6 months old, and nearly died. Everything was passing through him. And apparently what had happened, they had given him he had a lot of earaches when he was young, and apparently they had given him too much medication, and it stripped all the villi in his intestines so that he was unable to absorb any proteins. And this all at a very young age. How old was he, Annie? 6 months?
He was 8 months.
8 months. And he got to the point where he was actually in the fetal position and basically dying. And we ended up taking him to All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg. And he made it through that. But I do remember that time because I had just picked up a new job and, struggling, no money and so forth. And I just remember that being a very, very difficult time, not just because of John, because I was trying this new job and trying to make that happen. And he came through that. So that was a big deal in our life. And we, again, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of sacrifice to make that happen.
Fred, what's it been like, the challenge of supporting Leslie in the style to which she's accustomed?
I've got to tell you, Ralph, she is high maintenance,
No way. Yeah.
She's a fantastic gal, and she has always understood where, we talk about it, where we sit in terms of our finances and so forth, and she's always been so good about helping me and get through those things, and when times are tough. But
Have you had tough times in your job? What do you do, Fred?
I sell golf equipment. I'm a peddler. I sell it. I've been in the sporting goods. Actually, I was a teacher, a theology teacher in high school when I first came out of college.
Oh, wow.
And I did that for 7 years, and we had like little 4 mouths to feed, and I was looking at the bottom line, it just wasn't coming out. So I decided to go and try to get a job selling.
When I first met you, you were doing Prince tennis rackets and stuff like that.
I was doing Prince tennis rackets. A little previous to that, I was doing Wilson tennis rackets, and
Now you're doing
now I'm doing Wilson golf equipment.
stuff. Okay, good.
Yeah, so been doing that for over 20 years, and ready to quit. Ready to get into some ministry. But at any rate, I was let go from Prince. They had a downsizing, and they went from 5 reps in Florida to 2, and I was one of the ones that was let go. And it was very shortly after we had purchased our home on Sanibel Island and kind of stretched ourselves to get there. And one of the reasons we moved there was for our family. You know, we felt that it would be a great place to raise the children, kind of isolated in a way from what's going on in the city, and we could kind of protect them in that way. So that was basically our main motivation for that. Not to mention the beautiful beaches and the shelling and the boating and fishing.
and the hurricanes.
And the hurricanes.
And the hurricanes.
Yes. So, but I'd been let go, and you know, you learn to, when all else, you know, is failing you, you know, you realize you aren't in control of things, and that the Lord is in control, and you spend a lot of time on your knees, and surrendering.
Do you
to the
two
Lord.
pray together during times like that, or do you just pray individually and then talk about things, or do you actually come together? How does it work for you as a couple?
A little bit of both. I would say more of it is praying separately and then coming together. But we have, I mean, for years we prayed the rosary as a family in the evening time, and
with our children.
yeah. So there is the communal type of prayer, but there's a lot more individual prayer.
So even though you've been trying to follow Jesus all your life, you haven't been spared suffering and setbacks and losing your job and having health challenges and...
Well, I'm not telling you anything new, but you know, as Paul says, you know, he wants to remove the thorn from, Lord, remove that thorn from my side, and the Lord says no. And the longer that you live, I think, the more you realize that the thorn is there because the Lord loves you, and He wants to keep you close, and He wants all of you.
Wants to keep you humble.
He doesn't want just a little bit of you. He wants all of you.
Right.
And
Totally to depend on Him.
right.
Well, Leslie, what are some of the challenges that you've had to face as part of this team?
Oh, gosh. I unfortunately picked up a chronic illness about 6 years ago, and I was able to continue the ministry. And just a couple of years ago, it got increasingly worse, and I was bedridden. And at that time, we found out that our young son was, in his junior year, was taking drugs and doing drugs. And it was far more intense. It just wasn't marijuana, it was more than that. And I think that the rug was pulled out underneath our feet. And but that was a beautiful, beautiful time. I don't think I could
probably
see
tested
it
your faith a
in the
little bit.
midst.
It's probably
Right.
natural to think, hey, here I'm serving the Lord. Why aren't you protecting my
Right.
kids? Or why aren't things going better for my kids here? I'm really trying to...
Well, we're doing our best, and why did this happen? I mean, we're trying to be the best parents we can be, and bingo, this comes up. Yeah.
But we came together and we prayed, and it was a very difficult time. But I would just tell those parents that are out there that are dealing with these trials and tribulations and crosses, that not to despair. We were so blessed. We got him into a place in the Catskills of New York, where he was there for 2 years and graduated in high school through the 12-step program. But he came out and graduated a couple of years ago. He's at Ave Maria in Fort Myers. But he is a beautiful, beautiful boy, and God has just brought us as a family so much closer together. And I think that in times of trials, that parents have a choice. You can allow Satan to separate the two of you, but we decided that we weren't going to become bitter. We were going to become better. And Christ just drew us closer to His Sacred Heart, and Mother Mary to her Immaculate Heart. And
And what a consolation those two hearts are, you know, because they're very, very trying times, and anybody who's had children who have been addicted to drugs or alcohol or you know, death of a child or any of those things that occur in life, losing your job, financial difficulties, you know, you don't know where your next dollar is coming from. What a consolation it is, the Lord. I mean, He wraps you in His arms and holds you close.
Yeah, and in circumstances like that, we come to really experience in the depth of our lives is that He really truly is present.
He is.
And that He really truly does love us. We hit the wall in situations like that. We feel powerless. We don't know where to go. We feel so broken. We don't know what to do. And He's there, and all we can do is cling to Him and say, help us, give us light, help us get through this, Lord. And if we press into Him, He does lead us out.
He does.
Truly does. And it's right at that moment when lots of people run the other direction.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So
That's where,
true.
like you're saying, that's where the spiritual battle is right there. And if we just, in our brokenness and humility, just press into the Lord and cling to Him, He will demonstrate His faithfulness and how real He is and that He has the power to lead us out of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, you know, we're going to just take a little break now. We'll be right back, and just hold that, Leslie. I know you've got more to say, and you too, Fred.
Are you searching for ways to grow in prayer and holiness, in reading and sharing the good news, and in living as a disciple of Christ? Do you want to be challenged, encouraged, and strengthened in living out your faith daily? Then join us this summer at the Renewal Ministries Institute. The schools of the Renewal Ministries Institute are an answer to the Holy Father's call for all Christians to participate in a new evangelization. Noted biblical scholars and lay missionaries join the Renewal Ministries staff to provide dynamic, orthodox teachings that will re-energize your faith. Daily participation in the sacraments, worship, prayer ministry, adoration, and fellowship with Catholics from around the world will revive and deepen your commitment to the Church's mission. Call 734-662-1730 today or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net to find out more about the Renewal Ministries Institute.
Welcome back. We've been talking to Fred and Leslie Fisher from the Fort Myers, Florida area, a dedicated Catholic couple that are serving the Lord and loving each other and raising a family. And Leslie, you were about to say something just before we had our break.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage. Our prayer life has been such a rock, and going to Mass every day and receiving the Eucharist has just been of such great importance. It's really given us hope. And there's a story I just wanted to share briefly of, I read it in the newspaper, and it may have been some years ago, but of a young man who was in intensive care unit, and he had his lungs filled with fluid. And the only thing that was dividing him between the bed that was next to him was this curtain. And in the middle of the night, he had heard some commotion, and they had brought a young man in that had been in a terrible automobile accident. And he was paralyzed from the neck down. And this young man that was on the other side was propped up with his pneumonia, and he could look out the window. So every single morning when he woke up, he would tell the young man on the other side that was paralyzed from the neck down about the beautiful park that he saw down below, and the lovers intertwined hand in hand, and the children playing in the playgrounds, and the women feeding the birds. And this went on for 13 days. And then one morning, the man that was paralyzed from the neck down woke up, and he couldn't hear anything from the man next to him. And the nurses came in and said that we lost him during the night. He passed away. And the young man that was paralyzed said, "Will you do me just one favor? Will you just take my hospital bed and roll it over to where his bed was by the window?" And they did, and propped his head up, only for him to look out the window and see a brick building that was outside. There wasn't a park. And he later found out that the man that died of pneumonia was blind. And I just think it's so important for even us being here today is just to give everyone out there, the couples, hope, and that their hope is in Jesus Christ.
That's great. Fred, what would you have to say to people who are struggling in their marriages or families that could help them?
I don't know. I am just a humble servant of the Lord. I don't. I can just tell you what I do, and you know, it works for me. But I think there's three things I'd like to say about it, and one is it's imperative that you focus on the Lord every day, every morning when you wake up, because in the sales area, you know, they want, in work, they want more and more and more of you, and pay you less and less and less, of course, and they want all of you, and I refuse to give it to them. And so I think that's one lesson.
You belong to somebody else.
I belong to somebody else. This is just a means for me to support my family. It's not my life. And so I think the important thing is you must focus on the Lord in the morning and get yourself directed in the right way, because the day is going to bring with it many, many distractions. And I think also that when you encounter all these difficulties in life, you know, with unemployment, you know, son on the brink of death, son that's addicted to drugs, that you have to stay in the will of the Lord, and that you have to be a proper receptacle for the reception of God's grace. And that means that not just you need to pray, but you need to receive the Eucharist as often as you can for strength. You need to go to the sacrament of confession to cleanse yourself so that you are a worthy receptacle of God's grace, and He will fill you. But I do want to say that it's very, very difficult sometimes to pray, because you're inundated with your circumstance overwhelms you. And I just want to read a little excerpt if we have time.
Take your time. We got it. Yeah.
But this was very consoling to me, because oftentimes I'll go. It's very, very difficult to pray. And sometimes I'll have 15 minutes in between a call, and I'll stop in at the Blessed Sacrament just to say hey, and my mind's so filled with things I can't focus on what he's saying. But it says here, this is just from reading that I do in the morning, but nothing is more important than our daily appointment with Jesus. He is waiting for us. At all costs, the decision to persevere in devoting a set time to private prayer daily must be made and carried out inflexibly. It does not matter if one can do no more than remain on one's knees for the period and only battle with complete lack of success against distractions. One is not wasting time. When we spend time with the Lord, we'll always, in the end, be richer for it. Yeah. And that's just a great consolation to me, because sometimes I just sit there and I go, man, I can't even focus. So that's one thing. And second thing I would say is love your wife. You know, respect your spouse, and treat them with dignity. And we all have our faults, but you have to remain a unit, especially in the difficult times, because we always felt like our children are not going to be any better than the unit that we are. And if we aren't strong, then they're not going to come through whatever they're need to come through.
That's great.
And finally, that you need to love your children no matter what. I mean, even though they stray and so forth, if you are founded on the rock, then that transfers down to them, and even though they may stray, they'll come back. And so that's kind of what I say. So there's always hope, and
well, I think it's really encouraging that there's guys like you traveling the Florida highways, and in between sales calls are stopping off at the Blessed Sacrament. I think that's really inspiring, and that's really great.
It's a perk of my job, actually, and actually I get to pray. I usually have like an hour and a half drive time in the morning usually, and I get to pray the Rosary. So I look at that as a perk of my job, and sometimes when I think I don't want to be a sales guy anymore, I think, well, maybe that's why I'm in this so long, because the Lord wants me to continue to pray for whatever.
Yeah. For so many guys, there's such a division between, I go to church on Sunday and then I have my work life, and they're not blended together. And there's a way in which the vision you're giving is a very simple one, but an important one, to say, I'm a disciple of Jesus first. He's with me always, and what I want to do is I want to be attentive to that each day. I know He's with me, and I'm going to live like it. You know, I'm going to live the best I can. I'm going to try to live as though He's present and be attentive to Him, so He can use me and guide me. As you know, sometimes I bumble along when I do it. Sometimes it's difficult and I don't hear it. But your heart's set You know, when you were talking, I was thinking of Matthew 6. Seek first the kingdom of God. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. And all things will be added.
But Peter, you struggle with that every day. Every day you can't do it like once a week. You have to struggle with it every day. And I mean, I told Leslie the other day, I said, I am just terrible. I said, you know, I'm grumbling about my job. I don't like it. And during the day, I mean, I'm so wrapped up in things, I forget about the Lord during the day.
Sure.
And I struggle with that all the time. That, you know, I was doing pretty well there for a while. I used to say thank you to the Lord after every sales call. I said, I'm going to say thank you to the Lord. Will I get an order or not? Yeah. And I was doing real well there for a while, and then I don't know what happened. I guess I got too many orders, and I thought, oh well, I'm doing pretty good. I don't need to look.
Yeah, that's great. You know, one scripture passage that's come to mind a couple times while you've been talking is that one from 1 Corinthians 10, where it says, no test or trial has come to you that's not common to all human beings, but along with the test and trial, the Lord gives the strength to endure it or the grace to get out of it, and that no temptation will come to you beyond your strength. The Lord will not let you be tested beyond your strength. And sometimes it seems like it, doesn't it? You know, sometimes it seems like you're on the brink and you say, Lord, are you overestimating my strength?
Right.
Or, you know,
in the midst of it.
but there's a promise there that the Lord is in control even of the negative things that happen, and that He never lets things happen that is beyond our strength, and along with the challenge or the temptation or the trial, He's going to give us the grace to endure it. He doesn't always take it away, but He'll give us the grace to be in it and to bear it with love and with faith and with patience, or to take it away, whatever's the best for us and for His kingdom.
And what's so important too is not to keep your focus on the problem or the circumstance that of the suffering or the trial, to not lose sight of seeking Jesus.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can just spend so much time, like we did at times with John, you know, worrying, and that doesn't get us anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
You find oftentimes the more you focus on the problem, the worse it becomes.
Yeah.
And the less you do, the more God does, it seems to be.
Yeah.
But that's not to negate the things that you must do to solve the issue.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to stop, you know. Hey, if you've missed part of this program or you want to see it again or have your friends see it, it's available on our website. You can just go right to renewalministries.net and get the program. You can call for the free booklet or access the website, or write to the address. We'd like to send it to you to help you in your journey with the Lord. Until next time, this is Ralph Martin and Peter Herbeck and Fred and Leslie Fisher, wishing you the very best, a life that you wake up in the morning each day and say, Lord, I trust you, help me today. Life is short, and the years fly by with increasing speed. Life is fragile, and the fate of all human flesh is death. At some point, we all ask, what happens when I die? Is there life after death? What will it be like? How does what I do in this life affect what happens when I die? My booklet provides some answers to these important questions by reflecting on what Scripture and the Church say about what happens when I die. To receive this free booklet, call Renewal Ministries at 1-800-282-4789 or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net.